So much for joining us for Indianapolis This Week. Now 12 days after the election and exactly 2 months until the inauguration of Donald Trump and Mike Pence. The vice president-elect back in Indiana this week, promising again to finish his entire term as governor and promising to finish strong. Mike Pence also spending a lot of time in Washington this week as he has taken over the transition effort for the Trump administration. Pence meeting there with congressional leaders on Capitol Hill, including House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and new Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer.
How was the meeting, sir? How did it go?
Great meeting. I'm very grateful for the leaders' hospitality, and we look forward to finding ways that we could find common ground and move the country forward. And I'm very grateful for the open door and look forward to carrying the president-elect's agenda to all of the members of the Senate and all the members of the House after January 20th.
The governor also met with the state's Republican members of the U.S. House, including 3rd District Congressman-elect Jim Banks, who tweeted out these pictures. Among them there, as you can see, Luke Messer, a name being floated around as a possible choice for Donald Trump's Secretary of Education. And this scene on Wednesday, the vice president-elect with outgoing Vice President Joe Biden, their families having lunch together at Blair House, where the Pences will call home starting in January.
Well, we're just very grateful for the hospitality today of the vice president. Second lady, we had a very enjoyable time, and we got the coach tour. Most importantly, I think they made real progress in talking Mrs. Pence into another dollar.
Mr. Vice President, are you worried that the new administration will dismantle everything you've accomplished?
No, I'm not worried about it. Look, they ran on a platform. They're going to try to move. I think there's a lot of things that were done where we can reach some accommodation. And look, it's a whole new world, and we're prepared to work. I told Mike, the Vice President-elect, that I'm available to him 24/7.
The work is also underway right now to plan the actual inaugural ceremonies for President Trump and Vice President Pence. One Indiana man has been named to a key spot in the Presidential Inaugural Committee. Rafael Sanchez joins us now with Indiana's connection to the planned celebrations there in our nation's capital. Rafael.
Jason, Bob Grand is the only Hoosier on the President-elect's inaugural committee. Grand is an Indianapolis attorney with the firm Barnes and Thornburg. His main job will to be raising cash to pay for all the inaugural activities like the parade and the big parties. He says it's no different than the conventions when behind the scenes, supporters are asked to sponsor and fund these big-scale events.
I put it in perspective that it's a time when we all come together and celebrate this great country, you know, the peaceful transition of power. And I think to be a part of that, to be in D.C. And to be with the people that you supported is indeed a great honor.
And Jason, Bob got that call to join the Finance Committee on Tuesday. He'll spend the next several weeks focused on the big task at hand.
Rafael, you mentioned that this is Bob's first time serving on such a committee, but he has served past presidents at some critical times.
Yeah, Bob will never forget the 2000 Bush-Cheney election. He was among the lawyers who went to Florida as part of the recount team, and he will never, ever forget the words hanging chads. Now, this time around, he says he's proud to help out his friend, Vice President-elect Mike Pence.
I consider him a very good friend, he and Karen, and I would tell you that it's a great honor because, you know, he's a part of the ticket, obviously, and he's now the Vice President-elect, so it's a great honor to represent Hoosiers, and I think we'll have a great support from Hoosiers. I think there'll be a lot of folks that will be interested, who want to participate, want to attend, and so I'm just honored to be a Hoosier helping out with this great event.
Bob's name may sound familiar because he served as president of the Capital Improvement Board from 2008 all the way to 2010. The CIB oversees, as you know, the Convention Center, Lucas Oil Stadium, and Bankers Life Fieldhouse. And Jason, he'll be very, very busy in the next couple of weeks.
Yes, he will be. Rafael Sanchez, thank you for that. Have a great rest of your Sunday and a great Thanksgiving. Meanwhile, a rare appearance together this week in Indianapolis as the state's Republican Party chairman and Democratic Party chairman came together, shaking hands after a hard-fought election and sitting down together at IUPUI's semi-annual Bulletin Symposium on American Politics. I had a chance to join John Zodi and Jeff Cardwell there and spoke with both about what worked for them this year, what didn't, and what changes could be in the works for both parties going forward.
I think we had great candidates to start off with who talked about the right issues. We still feel strongly that the issues that our candidates talked about were the right ones for Indiana. And so to bolster that, our candidates ran great campaigns. So we think that worked very well for us. Unfortunately, the results didn't go that way, but we still feel very confident that we ran the right campaigns.
Well, it was a lot of high energy and momentum, a lot of people coming together. It really was a grassroots campaign, and that's really what worked. That was the game for us, and data. Everything we were doing with data-driven decisions along with our ground game, and that really worked very well for us.
Worked especially well in the governor's race and the U.S. Senate race. Big Republican wins on Election Day. State Democrats now crunching data as they look ahead.
Still analyzing results. We won't have a lot of results for a little bit here, but I think one of the things we always will look at is who our voters were, who they weren't, and where we need to target differently maybe is a thing we will look at. I can't say with certainty today what that is, but that's something we always look at, and moving forward we'll look at what the results were, who may have voted for Donald Trump and may not have split their ticket. We expected a lot of people to split their tickets, and if we see that we don't think a lot of people might have done that based on the analysis that we can do. We don't know exactly what someone did when they walked in the ballot booth, but we certainly will take that analysis and look at what we might do differently if it proves that we did something we could have done better.
Despite what he called a nice Tuesday for Republicans, GOP Chairman Cardwell says they didn't do everything they set out to do.
Oh, you always want to do more. I mean, you always feel like, did I do enough? And so in my leadership, I always look to run as a candidate like, we're running behind and continue to push hard. So we would continue doing what we were doing. We would continue to recruit more people. People wins elections. And so if I could do anything differently, I would recruit more people and I'd continue building our ground game.
Now nearly 2 weeks removed from a historic election, both say they're already looking ahead and weighing any potential platform changes going forward.
Look, in Indiana, we know that a presidential election cycle can be nationalized very easily. We think that's what happened here. So we're always focused on Indiana and what issues we think work best here in Indiana for our platform. We think that platform was right this time, so we look to keep moving in that sort of direction. We'll let the national stuff figure itself out and see where the national conversation goes, but we're going to keep focused right here in Indiana and do what's best for our candidates here, and then which we believe will be what's best for Hoosiers down the road.
I think we're going to continue with the plan that we have. We'll continue to develop and grow what we've already been doing and really work with our data program, our data and digital program. But it's all about people. It's really about getting the younger millennials more involved, getting them more engaged, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
Indianapolis this week. One Indiana Democratic lawmaker now says it's time for the party to make some big changes. Dan Forstall now making that plea in an open letter to Democrats this week, saying Democrats have veered off course and that they can no longer support the same old politics. Our State House reporter Katie Hines is with him.
Representative Forstall, thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me, what drove you to write this message to fellow Democrats?
I think, like most Democrats in the state of Indiana and probably the country, I woke up a little confused and maybe even feeling a little lost about the direction that the Democratic Party was going to take going forward. And when I really thought about what it means to be a Democrat and what we needed to do to rebuild trust, not only with Hoosiers, but as a party, I came up with a pretty, I thought, good set of ideas, and I wanted to share those with my fellow Democrats, and so I put it in a letter and shared it, and so far the response has been pretty positive.
How do you think the party can learn from the results of this election?
I think what the party needs to do, and I think this election is an opportunity to really learn from this experience, is to really start listening to what the voters are telling them. One of the things that voters were telling us was that they wanted real change, and I don't think we offered them that. I think that there is a feeling amongst people that the Democratic Party maybe hasn't lived up to its message of being the party of working people, when we are the party of working people. We need to be going into union halls and knocking on people's doors and talking about the economic issues and the rigged system that exists. We have not been doing that, and we haven't been truthful with Hoosiers about the fact that the system is really rigged against everyday Hoosiers. Those at the top have written our laws and rigged this system so that those in the middle and at the very bottom have almost no chance of getting ahead. And in the state of Indiana, if you're born poor, you're more likely to die poor than in any other state in the country.
Who's responsible for the rigged system? Who's to blame?
I think there is blame to go around. I think this system has slowly gotten worse, for generations. But at some point, we absolutely have to draw a line in the sand and say no longer will we allow special interests to come into our hallowed halls, our legislatures, and force legislators to vote in ways that go against what is in the best interest of their constituents. We have to fix things like the gerrymandering of legislative districts. I mean, allowing elected officials like myself to draw their own legislative districts runs counter to the very fundamentals of our democracy. When voters are telling us that they are worried and the system is rigged and that they feel like they can't get ahead, we can't change the topic and talk about something that they seem uninterested in. We have to acknowledge their fear and work to fix it. We cannot keep telling people that they are wrong or racist and all of these kinds of things. We have to listen to them and fix what they are telling us to fix. And I think we can do that, and I think we will do that.
Is the Democratic Party still relevant?
Absolutely. And we are going to rebuild this party, I think, in a way that all Hoosiers will be proud of. There is no other party of working people. That is the Democratic Party. That is why I became a Democrat.
Is new leadership needed at the state party?
I think we need new leadership in the Democratic Party, period. I don't think there's any one position that is integral. I think we need new voices. I think we need new people, new younger faces in the Democratic Party who stand up and say, I agree. I think those who have flooded our election system with money and who continue to write our laws and create tax loopholes for themselves should not have a place at the table anymore, and their voice should not matter more than the average person going to work every day. Their voice should matter just as much.
What's at stake?
Everything is at stake. Confidence in government has never been lower. I've never seen people more disappointed or more angry in government, at the media. I've never seen anything like it. And when I wake up every day, it's bizarre to go from being a firefighter where people really thank you for the job you do and enjoy having you at their house, and then I go to being a politician and they really don't respect the job you do. We have to restore confidence. That is what this entire democracy is about. It is by the people, and they have to have confidence in the system or the whole thing breaks down. It's time to restore that. This has gone on for too long. I believe that it is time for a new guard to step in and take the reins, and I think that we are at a point where we can do that.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
I appreciate it.
By some of our favorite political insiders here, Mary Beth Schneider, Kip Toof for the Democrats, Abdul Hakim Shabazz, our favorite conservative commentator.
Always happy to be here.
Always great to see you as well. 12 days now after the election, we're all kicking back a little bit, and we're also starting to look forward. You heard from Dan Forstall, you heard from John Zodi. They're talking about the direction of the Democratic Party going forward after what, by all accounts, was a pretty rough election day for Democrats statewide. Kip, where do the Democrats go from here? Any changes they need to make?
Well, they have to look at what works in Marion County. I think that's one of the counties where we did very well, and as a matter of fact, carried the county for the governor's candidate by 97,000 votes. That's where we have to build from, it seems to me. But there's no sugarcoating or anything else. It was a terrible night for Indiana Democrats. Most of us really believed that John Gregg was going to come across the finish line, thought that Hoosier voters were ready to put a check on the right-wing extremism that occurred over the legislature over the past couple of years, but it didn't happen. And so I think probably what was missing was an economic message that people heard. I think John Gregg was talking about an economic message a bunch, but I'm not sure that it was heard, and I think it was overwhelmed by Trump carrying the state by such a large margin.
Abdul, was it something the Democrats did wrong, or something that Republicans, that Donald Trump did right, or was it just what happened?
It was, to a certain degree, in all honesty, to be intellectually honest, it was sort of all of the above. I think where my Democratic friends made some major mistakes was you went retro at a time that was time to go for change. You went for Hillary Hillary Clinton, you did Evan Bayh, you did John Gregg, sort of the same old as VH1, I love the 90s. Eric Holcomb,
but we do love the 90s.
Yeah. Eric Holcomb, Todd Young, both under 50. I mean, that's a new generation of Republican leadership, and Democrats are going to have to find it. And as philosophical differences as Dan Forrestal may have, he's absolutely right. It's just time to clean house and start all over again.
Mary Beth, where do the Democrats go from here?
I sort of agree with both of them. I do think they need new faces. But I also think that you can't just replicate Marion County, because you see nationwide Democrats continuing to do amazingly well, really well, in urban areas with diverse populations, and where they are hurting is in more rural white areas. And you've got to keep the voters that you have, the blacks, the minorities, the immigrant population, the young people, the women, but also somehow manage to bring on board those people who feel that for whatever reason the Democrats cared about other people than them.
One of the more interesting statistics that I looked at was what happened in Hamilton County. Donald Trump won it by, I think, 54 or 55%. But Eric Holcomb won it by above 60. So you saw, at least in that county, there was a big switch, but people went back to the Republican Party. It's not something that we expected. We sort of expected that Trump would be the brand for the Republican Party in the donut counties, and it didn't happen. They returned to their roots. So I mean, it'll be interesting going forward what we do. She is absolutely right. We can't, as Democrats, rely on demographics. It's not enough. It wasn't enough in the presidential race. It won't be enough statewide. But we have to have a message that appeals to those suburban voters who I think are swingable. They showed it in this campaign.
Quickly, who steps up now as the face of the Democratic Party in Indiana? Any ideas?
I do think that Christina Hale has a real future ahead of her. I think if you look to some of the mayors, people like Greg Goodnight, people who are already appealing to white working class, I think they have a future.
Is it a Pete Buttigieg in South Bend?
I think definitely.
We still have a United States Senator, Joe Donnelly, who's going to be up in 2018. I think that it's going to be an interesting election year going forward. I'm sure your viewers are sick of hearing about the next election, but we are going to have a next election in 2 years. He's certainly the head of the party, I think, for all intents and purposes in the state of Indiana. You obviously have the mayor of Indianapolis, Joe Hogsett, as well. But Christina Hale, I think, did a fantastic job as lieutenant governor candidate, so she's one of our rising stars. Dan Forrestal is one of our rising stars. There's lots of young state legislators who just got elected who I think are a very good bench for the Democratic Party going forward.
And something else Democrats are going to have to do is one thing they didn't do this time around was have any minorities at the top of their statewide ticket. We had Christina Hale, was of Cuban descent, but no African Americans whatsoever. And in a situation like this, where your African American votes are sort of depressed, because remember, Marion County vote was actually down compared to previous years. You can't run statewide on the presidential year if you're an Indiana Democrat without an African American somewhere on the ticket.
Let's jump from Indy now to Washington. The transition fully underway. Any surprises so far with whom you have seen added to Donald Trump's likely cabinet?
Great white wall. I mean, it is all so far white men. Now, this could change because of some of the people that they've been talking to, but I think it is not a surprise, but it's unfortunate if Donald Trump doesn't have a more diverse cabinet. Not just diverse in gender and race, but also diverse in pick somebody who wasn't just a true loyalist, somebody who's going to bring in other voices into his cabinet, just like Democrats may need more voices in their party.
But actually, I think the Trump people are going to find a problem because they instituted that sort of no lobbying rule. That if you come work for the administration, you can't lobby 5 years after you leave. Like, well, guess what? People have to make a living. People have to eat. So you're going to have a harder time finding the good people that you want, to give up their private sector jobs to come work for an administration if they can't go back to what they were doing beforehand.
I think it's an unmitigated disaster that is going to continue to unfold as an unmitigated disaster. He shouldn't be the president-elect, in my opinion, and I don't think he has the judgment. I don't think he has the experience. I don't think he has the intelligence to function as the president of the United States, and it's going to continue to be a rolling disaster.
Don't hold back, Kim. Tell us how you feel.
That's how I feel. I mean, I don't think that I would want a car insurance salesman to perform brain surgery on me. At the moment, we have a president-elect who's never held any political office. People put him in there because they were sick of politics. politics as usual. They're going to get a change, but it's not going to be a good one.
I think one of the big concerns that you're seeing from the left is Jeff Sessions. He is not a surprise because he was the first senator to come out and very strongly for Donald Trump, and he has a history of saying racist things, and it kept him from a judgeship back when Reagan was president. So to have him now as the Attorney General in charge of things like voting rights and civil rights is a real concern to a lot of people. He's going to get approved, but it's going to be brutal.
Last word, Abdul, Kip, Mary Beth, thanks for joining us.